What does it mean to be a Spartan? Oh god, not that. That seems like a silly question. Obviously we know, we've played as the Master Chief for multiple games at this point. We've seen his character go through all his highs and lows while ultimately ensuring the survival of the human race. But here's the thing, in the original games we only ever saw him as just that, the Master Chief. This unstoppable demon tearing through wave after wave of Covenant soldiers, overcoming seemingly impossible odds as a badass hero with his signature one-liners.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
But we don't ever really get to see the man behind the visor, John 117. While later games in the franchise did lean into the more human angle of him, in the Bungie games we didn't really get any of that. John mostly served as an extension of the player, the figure for which we could interact with the world. While this did work for the gameplay, narratively it meant we kind of knew next to nothing about him. Unless you had read the books, you'd have no idea what John's backstory was, or even the fact he was, well, a child soldier. Bungie has always had this relatively limited scope for the franchise, keeping things contained to what was present in the games. Now of course we have the aforementioned books, but also comics and spin-offs and whatnot to flesh out more of the story. But Bungie's relationship with them was contentious to say the least. Needless to say, with regards to the Spartans, Chief was really our only idea of what a Spartan was until Halo Reach with George and Noble Team, 9 whole years after we first got introduced to John. In short, for the longest time, John was the only Spartan players knew. And this is where we get to Halo Legends, a rather niche anthology of several animated episodes. While Legends ultimately included multiple Spartans, of course including Master Chief, there are two in particular I want to touch upon, Daisy-023 and Cal-141, exploring their backstories in Legends and outside of it, their presentation, and the themes they represent, showing us what it truly means to be Spartan. With the conclusion of the legendary Halo trilogy by Bungie in 2007, with 2 more spin-off games made in the following years, the franchise would be handed off to 343 Industries after years of the former developers' deteriorating relationship with Microsoft. Now for all the, let's say questionable decisions 343 has done with the franchise, one of the first things they knew and did well was seeing the potential of expanding the storytelling of Halo, giving us more of the universe we came to know and love. In the words of Bonnie Ross, one of the founders of 343, they wanted a fresh, different way to tell a lot of the new stories and also bring a lot of the old stories that Halo fans love together in a new format. Or what probably happened, Frank O'Connor binged the Animatrix after drinking too much whiskey and Iron Brew and thought, hey, what if we did that? And thus Halo Legends was born, a collaboration effort between 343 and several different Japanese animation studios. One of Legends' coolest aspects is that every episode is made by a different studio, and we really get to see a truly diverse range of animation styles, from a water-painted CGI look to a more traditional 2D anime style. All these 20-odd minute shorts are truly well crafted and uniquely beautiful. Now while all 7, yes, Bungie's favorite number, episodes are amazing in their own rights and all deserve attention,
I'm one heck of a mama myself!
for this video I'll only be focusing on ones focusing on the Spartans, Daisy and Cal, featured in Homecoming and Babysitter respectively. Let's start with the more fleshed out of the two, Daisy-023. Appearing in the short Homecoming, the very beginning of this episode gives us a simple rundown of human history up to this point, with the narrator mentioning how the invention of the Shaft Fujikawa drive, the device that allows ships to travel faster than light, in 2291 allowed humanity to escape the Sol system and establish the inner colonies within 30 years. With this mention of the achievements of old, the narrator moves on to the present with the Human Covenant War in 2525, that how within a decade most of the outer colonies have been destroyed. With the Covenant pressing into the territory of the inner colonies, humanity's only hope lies in a special group of augmented super soldiers.
These soldiers were known as the Spartan-IIs.
Already with this opening we get set right into the mood. This isn't a tale of heroically pushing back the Covenant, but simply trying to hold the line against a superior enemy. There is no victory, only setbacks. And this feeling is continued and reinforced as we follow a group of Marines being pinned down after orders come through to fall back, and they're failing.
God damn it, it just ain't my day.
And here we are introduced to Daisy, in typical Spartan fashion, a total badass, gunning down coveys left and right with all the aerobatics included. Her presence inspires the rest of the men as the engagement turns in their favour, a beacon of hope in a gloomy situation. But again, this optimism is crushed right away with Daisy's announcement.
How's Gamma 4?
Gamma 4 is gone.
Even with a Spartan, all they can do now is retreat and evacuate from the planet. A shocking new development arises as Daisy recognizes the voice on the other end.
Have to make your own way.
Wait a sec.
What?
I know that voice. Ralph.
And here we go into the past to Daisy's childhood, or rather the one robbed of her. Like all members of the Spartan-II program, Daisy and Cal were a group of 75 children around the age of 6 selected due to their strong genetic background, and by selected I mean kidnapped. Daisy herself was taken by Oni agents when she was alone outside, leaving only her teddy bear charm floating in the fountain water. This is a very important motif for Daisy, as we'll see later, but for context's sake I think it's important to explain why the Spartan-II program came about. For decades prior to the discovery of the Covenant, and by discovery I mean being blown up, the UNSC was dealing with its own civil war within its outer colonies. Dubbed the Insurrection, rebels viciously fought against the control of Earth, wanting to secure their own independence and stop paying Earth taxes.
I don't care who
UNSC.
sends, I am not paying taxes.
By 2491, things got out of hand and the Carver findings were published, essentially saying that if the insurrection was not controlled in time, the UNSC would collapse. This was obviously alarming, and by the beginning of the 26th century, Dr. Catherine Halsey would begin work on a project to create augmented super soldiers meant to solve the insurrection. Halsey actually appears in another Legends episode, where apparently she went from looking like this to then this 8 years later. By 2511, all preparations were complete. Originally they aimed to produce 300 Spartans, but due to various limitations and budget cuts, it was cut down to 75. Yes, 300 Spartans, it's a goddamn reference. Since the program was going to last a projected 10 years, with strict obedience and the ability to take augmentations being absolutely necessary, the candidates had to be extremely young. Hence, John, Daisy, and Cal and all other Spartan-IIs were forcefully brought in when they were only 5 and 6. That is something that's always stuck out to me with the Bungie games, how we never really got to see or even get an idea of how grim the backstory was. The man who would save humanity from an alien threat was once a 6-year-old taken from his home to fight other people. Unlike Bungie, Homecoming makes it very clear just how messed up the Spartan-II program was. We now return back to Daisy's flashback, where in 2525 she and several other candidates rebelled against the program, ultimately fleeing from their facility on Reach. While resting, we see her and Ralph 103, the same one as before, discussing what it would be like to go home to their families, after being away for so long and enduring awful augmentations. Which, just for your information, statistically, only half of the Spartans who went through the augmentation surgery made it through. The other half straight up died or washed out. The surgeries were absolutely hell on those who survived, permanently changing and scarring their bodies. At this time, they were only 14, having endured 8 years of brutal training. Daisy states how she wants to return home to her family, but Ralph contests it, noting how different they've become, how seemingly impossible it would be to return to their old lives. But Daisy remarks,
It doesn't matter. I'm going. I have to. It's the only home that I have.
Daisy is clearly not well adjusted to the program, and why would she be? She was stolen from her family and forced into a life of essentially enslavement to Oni and Halsey. Moving on, Daisy is able to get off planet and sneaks aboard a vessel to her home planet of Sargasso. She returns to her hometown and comes across a fountain, the last thing she saw before being kidnapped. She decides to strip off her dog tags and cast them into the water, an obvious parallel to her bear charm. While the teddy bear represented her innocence and how she had lost it, she now discards the identity forced on her, that of a soldier. Soon enough, Daisy gazes upon her family home for the first time in almost a decade, her face conveying hope to return to her old life. Very quickly that hope is once again lost as Daisy comes to find herself admiring the garden flowers. Halsey appears and informs Daisy of what she is seeing, a clone. To keep the program a secret, the 75 children were not to be declared missing. Thus, the children had what are called flash clones created, vat-grown replicas of themselves to stand in for them that would relatively quickly die, leaving the distraught parents none the wiser to the true fate of their children. Halsey tells Daisy,
The clone lives a life in your place. The life that was originally meant for you. Come back to the facility 23.
That's one of the major themes of Homecoming, that disconnect between the old life of the Spartan-IIs and their new lives as super soldiers. Daisy's life was robbed from her, played out by someone else. Her home was no longer hers. Instead, her home, if you can call it that, was the institutes that subjected her to horrible atrocities. Daisy unholsters her pistol and aims it at her clone, the one that was given the freedom to be surrounded by a loving family in peace. I think that notion is also present in their facial expressions. While the clone can only smile at Daisy, Daisy's face is stressed. Ultimately, Daisy decides to spare her clone. She has given up on going back to how things used to be. Before she leaves and returns to Oni custody, her clone offers her bear charm, the same one she lost all those years ago, to which she accepts, keeping a reminder to where she came from. Daisy returns to the facility on Reach with Ralph, where we learn the two other escapees ended their own lives after coming into contact with their clones. Daisy's own clone would pass shortly after. Back to the present, Daisy and the Marines make their way to the evacuation point. The episode makes a big point to compare the bridge to Daisy's home, though it's certainly not her home world. Homecoming never states where or when everything happens. Judging by the opening, it suggests this is an inner colony world, or one of the last few outer colonies attacked, so at the earliest it's 2535, though it's ultimately never stated. As they advance to the evac point, they are attacked by Covenant forces. They manage to push towards the bridge, with help from their Pelican, but Elite's able to get a lucky grenade off. Daisy and Halsey manage to survive and continue on, until another elite appears. Without hesitation, Daisy pushes Halsey out of the way. Ralph manages to save Daisy from being finished off, but the injured Spartan yells at him to get out of there and leave her, but they all defiantly stand their ground. Unfortunately for them, the Covenant's brutal onslaught eventually breaks them. The transport is destroyed as all Daisy can do is watch helplessly. Later on, her body is stumbled upon by the chief, who puts his dear comrade to rest, letting her hold her bear charm for one last time. Overall, an emotional rollercoaster of an episode. Homecoming gives an unapologetic view into what it's like to be a Spartan-II, and I think the title reflects that. It's literal, in the sense we see Daisy return to her place of birth, but there's also the figurative part of it. Daisy was put in a new home, one she had no choice in deciding. Reach was chosen as her home by Oni. In a sense, it's about the loss of her home and the creation of a new one, along with the depressive mood of the episode. It's opposite of Chief's story, where his appearance usually turns a hopeless situation into a victory, whereas with Homecoming, even as a Spartan-II, Daisy is ultimately powerless. Artemis, with the hope her deployment brings being crushed by the might of the Covenant. Ultimately, it's a tragic tale. But that actually isn't the end for Daisy's story, for she would make her re-emergence 9 years later in the prequel book Halo: Silent Storm by Troy Dennings. While I'm not going to be discussing the whole book obviously, I want to point out the small moments of characterization she gets. To quickly fill in context, the book follows the Spartan-IIs in 2526, a year into the war, as they participate in Operation, get this, Silent Storm. The plan was to buy time for the UNSC to develop effective countermeasures against the Covenant, utilizing 3 Spartan teams and a battalion of ODSTs to board as many Covenant vessels as possible, and destroy them, delaying the aliens from moving further into human space. One of the teams involved was Gold Team, which Daisy was a member of. Her first mention is early on as the Spartans board the Covenant frigate Radiant Arrow as it travels through space. With a successful infiltration, the Spartans slowly make their way through the vessel undetected. Gold Team in particular was ordered to fill up docked Banshees with Covenant weaponry and throw them out for their prowlers to collect. So yes, Daisy was playing loot goblins on some needlers. Midway through, however, a sensor operator accidentally broadcasted the Spartans on an open channel. John makes the obvious statement that the aliens know we're here, to which Daisy responds quickly with, "No shit. If we get out of this, I'm gonna find the dumbass who gave us away and rip his before she is cut off." Clearly, Daisy is one of the more foul-mouthed of the group, and John remarks how Daisy is the most intractable, aka she's difficult to deal with, which makes sense for one of the more rebellious Spartans. Her bad mouth appears again later on, as one Colonel Crawler came at odds with the Spartans under his command. While the others were more reserved in their objections to his plans, Daisy was the opposite, with John remarking, "It was, of course, Daisy. It was always Daisy." It seems her attitude was a staple of her personality. This page also mentions how she was just shy of 2 meters, putting her on the smaller size of her fellow Spartan-IIs. This is largely where Daisy's time in the spotlight ends. While she does get a bit more dialogue later in the book, they don't provide much more characterization. Now, technically she is mentioned, but a reference to her did make its way into Halo Infinite of all places, where you can get a clonely bear on your chest plate. Yeah, this is all she gets. Literally this. This is what she died for. Overall, that's everything lore-wise for Daisy 023, showing her to be a troubled but still capable Spartan, whose life was tragedy after tragedy. But she isn't the only Spartan shown in Halo Legends, as we now move on to Cal 141, featured in the episode The Babysitter. Babysitter contrasts Homecoming, where that episode focused on the perspective of a Spartan. This time it's mainly a group of ODSTs, with the standout being O'Brien, an extremely skilled sniper upset that he is assigned as backup on their new assignment. Another ODST of note is Dutch, the very same one from Halo 3 ODST. It's a very random but cool addition connecting the games to the episode. Moving on, the group's mission is as follows. They are to deploy to the planet of Heian, where they will need to assassinate a minor prophet responsible for Covenant logistics in the sector. Killing them will buy the UNSC significant time to regroup and exploit the supply chain disruption. Furthermore, they have a secondary objective to scan the planet's ancient ruins, noted for predating both humanity and the Covenant, and Cal just sits quietly through all this, a running theme in this episode. Another thing that will become apparent is the rivalry between the group and Cal, since within universe, the ODSTs and Spartans don't get along very well. O'Brien feels the most personal about this, seeing how his skills as a sniper have been sidelined for Cal, but that will be put on hold as the squad deploys, flying through an asteroid belt to remain undetected in a really well done scene. Unfortunately for Checkman, his drop pod is hit by an asteroid and he goes of course, burning up in the planet's atmosphere. Of course, they kill off the only black guy, and yes, I had to look up the Halopedia article just to remember his name, and the bad luck continues as O'Brien's pod gets stuck in a swamp. The other ODSTs rush to get their equipment, but Cal just steps right in unfazed and pulls the pod out, which, by the way, those things weigh over 1,000 pounds, and it's not even counting O'Brien and his gear. They most definitely lift. More importantly, the scene demonstrates the sheer physical difference between a regular human like an ODST to a Spartan. Spartans are just in a league of their own. With O'Brien saved, the group begins their long march to the vantage point, coming across ruins occupied by some Covenant. A cool detail is that instead of directly talking to the ODSTs, Cal exclusively uses hand signals to communicate. Like with the swamp scene, it makes another disconnect between the Spartans and the ODSTs. But amidst their sneaking, O'Brien is almost killed by a brute chieftain, but Cal manages to get in between them. And while O'Brien stumbles around like a ragdoll, Cal has an intense fight with the brute, showing off their martial prowess before sending the alien tumbling down the waterfall. Thankfully for O'Brien, Cal is able to rescue him again. You do not know how badly I want to be O'Brien here.
It should have been me, not him!
Advancing onwards, the team gets the chance to get up close to these mysterious human-like ruins and find themselves at the designated vantage point. Cal sets up their sniper to a very pouty O'Brien behind them. They get comfortable as they await the arrival of the prophet. Suddenly, the chieftain returns and brings his grav hammer down on O'Brien. Without hesitating, Cal pushes him out of the way and takes the devastating blow. The ODSTs take the chance to tackle the brute and quickly dispatch it. I'm not even going to explain the scene, just watch for yourself.
Take the shot. O'Brien, now! You're the only one who can do it.
Absolute cinema. This scene is burned into my brain. Shout out to O'Brien here. He had no setup time, an elevated heart rate, no HUD guidance, nothing, and managed to get a headshot from 2 miles away. Sign this dude up to a pro team. Unfortunately though, the success of the mission comes with the loss of Cal 141, as she entrusts the ODSTs to bring the ruined data to Halsey. Her impact is felt by all those present, none more than O'Brien, who went from bitterly resenting Cal to appreciating her support. Babysitter follows in Homecoming in the showcase of a Spartan's death, though unlike Homecoming, where the loss of Daisy ultimately came with defeat and wasted lives, here Cal's death was the sacrifice needed to claim victory. So while there is still the sadness of her loss, it is remedied by the fact they achieved their goals. As mentioned before, one of the episode's core themes was the difference between the Spartans and regular humans, how much more capable they are from them, almost inhumanly in a way, reinforced by Cal being isolated from the group with her lack of speaking, which makes her request to O'Brien so much more impactful. Now outside this episode, Cal has almost no inclusion in any outside media, unlike Daisy in Silent Storm. The only mention of her you can find is in Halo Waypoint, with a post about Operation Grey Veil from Dr. Halsey's notes, and we see how she and the wider UNSC felt about her death, equating the death of a single Spartan to that of an entire world. To conclude, what does Halo Legends tell us about the meaning of Spartans? Unlike the games, we get to see the ugliest side of the program, the atrocities that came with the creation and the horrible circumstances they put themselves in fighting the Covenant. To be a Spartan is to endure an indentured servitude that took everything from them, and remade into something outside the scope of regular humans. But while they were super soldiers, they were not invincible. The death of a Spartan came with shock and despair, even with the victories that came with it. Thus, Legends makes its mark on the Halo franchise, giving a more depressive depiction of humanity's saviors. And so this video comes to an end. This was a fun one to make, aside from the fact I had to rewatch all these sad moments. Can't say that was lovely in the slightest, but thank you very much for watching. Your patronage has been much appreciated.
Take the shot. O'Brien, now!
Kill, tech. Are you guys nuts?